Tangible experience of my own perfection, realized and focalized moments, which promises the eventual actualization of my full potential through my own willingness and time. I believe in my ability to stand unwaveringly on the foundation of my faith without fear of falling. I believe that by refining my own person through time, in order to more fully represent God's perfect creation of me, that I allow my fellows the opportunity to do the same. The human spirit is eternal and invincible, and I believe that nothing outside of me can threaten the peace of my inner altar. Above all, I believe that I am a citizen of the cosmos, here to represent the Creator who sent me, and the work God gave me to do is my guarantee for everlasting peace in this world and all subsequent experiences of existence hereafter. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Existence speaks. Now has come time for me to listen. This is Existential Theism from an Experiential perspective.
This is Existential Theism from an Experiential perspective. Good evening and welcome to Existential Theism from an Experiential perspective. I am Michael Wordsworth, and in the following series, we will be exploring the work of M. Dabney, who has spent the last 6 years working on a book entitled A Declaration of Healing. This work lays out a theosophical perspective that derives from Miss Dabney's studies of the text, A Course in Miracles. These studies have allowed her to cultivate a relationship with God and existence as a living experience. With such a lofty subject, it is difficult to decide where to start, and therefore, we will start at the beginning, just as the Course teaches. For the entire lesson can be summed up in these 3 axioms. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Good evening, Miss Dabney. This is an ongoing series that you will be divulging to us the benefit and experience of 6 years of your work, which comes almost in the form of a revelation in itself. Let's begin by discussing those 3 axioms, Miss Dabney.
I guess it's important to start with the distinction between what is real and what is unreal. In order to understand what is real, you must understand that everything that is real cannot be harmed or threatened or opposed or have anything standing opposite to it. Rather, it is eternal, infinite, diverse, creative and co-creative, and ever-becoming. Whereas the unreal could never be. No matter how hard we pretend or try to make believe something is real when it's not, it doesn't matter because it can never be, nor can it be shared. This distinction is really prominent in the psychology of our family.
And how we relate to that which can be experienced. How would you give that perspective? What framework would you give to that as we look out towards the existential from this experiential perspective?
Well, I mean, I look at it as like it's a mind frame. You have a choice. You are a manifest personality, inevitably yourself, inevitably real yourself in a very real existence. And you can choose as a free will creature, because we have the ability of consciousness, you can choose whether to interact with the actuality of yourself and reality around you, or you can choose to desire it and act as if it needs to be otherwise, or and respond to it inappropriately based upon this desire for it to be otherwise. That's where judgment comes in. Judgment is a method we use to look at the present moment and decide whether it's lived up or failed what we expect from it, based upon our past experiences and what we hope to accomplish in the future. But despite that, despite any of those judgments, which are all delusions, I mean, thus we feel, unjustified self-righteousness or terrible despondency and self-loathing, depending on whether they're satisfied or not by more judgments. But instead of that, we can actually just look at the moment that is and embrace that as the reality and use that as the tools that we have, including our own person. I guess I'm kind of...
Let me ask you, I've read much of your work, and the question I have for you is the framework between the body, mind, and spirit as it relates to this judgment, as it relates to this experience.
That's a good place to start. That's a good place to start. So the body is the vehicle of expression. We birth into this existence we call mortality, and we are birthed into a body, which is basically a tool. It has no will or power of its own, but it can be used and manipulated and employed for the benefit of exploring this world, whatever way. The mind is the seat of the personality. The mind is basically the subjective consciousness that builds an identity based upon the narrative it experiences in this sojourn. And the mind is where the faculty of decision lives, and the free will, the consciousness. And then there's the spirit, and the spirit. People talk about the spirit in all kinds of ways. They talk about it as soul, which is this weird ethereal thing, or like various other and sundry ways of structuring it in this weird, like, metaphysical whatever. But like I believe that the spirit actually is the extended personality. It is the unique personality placed in a conscious mind, or extended into a conscious mind, subjective consciousness, and then placed in a body to interact with other bodies, other personalities. So our reality is our personality, the perfect extension, a focalized expression of God's infinitely unified and infinitely diverse personality, which I'm sure I'll be talking much on. But we experience ourselves as mind in this world. And because we experience ourselves as mind, as subjective consciousnesses, instead of being the existential personality, just fully manifest without time, we manifest ourselves in time, so in some kind of linear-ish fashion. And that's how we get a hand in our own becoming, and we get the power of free choice in whatever way.
And that free choice is in large part affected by our judgment.
Yes. People talk about free will, like, okay, I have the choice to pick up this can of coffee, or I have a choice to walk down the street, I have a choice to do this radio show, whatever it is. But those aren't really free will choices. Those choices are arbitrary choices that you are basically reacting to in the moment based upon a judgment that you've established in a prior moment, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And so the only real free choice we have is either to interact with reality or not. I mean, we can interact with reality, what is, inevitably, despite anything we might wish otherwise, or we can choose not to and instead interact with our own, fabricated delusions. And, thereby you're always going to be disappointed or scared or bewildered or whatever it is.
How do we recognize the difference between the real and the unreal?
Well, I mean, with the real comes a certain kind of man, that's a hard one to get at. The unreal, I know for certain, is anything that is man, how to get at that one?
I've heard you speak of it before as negative. Anything?
Yeah, anything negative-ish, anything that is vying for something other than what it is. Anything that is trying to place not a desire, because desires are good. Desires are nice. They're a normal driving force in this biological body. But I guess okay. So animals don't fight each other. They don't have war over you slept with my girlfriend, or they don't have war over God, or anything like that. Whereas we do. We can think about these things, these more abstract things, but we can experience them as reality or not. So when reality functions, like when you're participating, I know I'm getting about this a little weird. When you're participating in reality, it's responsive. Things function. You're safe. You know it. You access your power. Your true, absolute human power. And you are able to access and
integrate, perhaps?
Yeah, integrate. I mean, it's consistency, I mean, it has to do with consistency, but it's that moment when you, okay, so I work in a bar, right? And there's nights where I'm really on and there's nights when I'm really off. But when I'm really on, when every response I have is perfect, when every response and when every movement is just right, it's like that feeling, that catharsis, that power, and that accomplishment, the way it carries over afterwards, because I know I solidified something I've practiced all of a sudden, and it's there, and it's always there from that moment forward in whatever way. And but when I'm not participating in reality, when I'm like upset about my dad's surgery, or upset about whatever issue I might have, or choosing to be annoyed with who's ever around me instead of open, then it doesn't work. It doesn't function. Everything's very jarring and inconsistent. Everything's very...
Are you saying there's a continuity, a synchronicity that occurs when we, shall I dare say, when we're on the path or riding the correct wave?
Yeah, I mean, it's an orientation towards reality. Like, it's back to that idea. It's an orientation towards what is, or an orientation towards what you would think you would rather it be. And what you would think you would rather it be is something that you construct yourself, and it's no one else's. You can't share it. But reality itself is shareable, And so when you access reality, it functions. It's consistent, it's efficient, it's beautiful, it's interesting. Harmonious. Absolutely functional. And I mean, you look at all the incredible, magnificent things that we cultivate and create as a family, as peoples. Our technologies at this point are just beautiful and mind-blowing, albeit very adolescent, but you look at that, and then you look at how we delay that, and how we put roadblocks in our own paths just for the sake of, I guess it would be money, but really for the sake of materialism, trying to hold on to this very short life as if this is all there is, or as if it's not enough. I don't know.
We can only speculate on that which we do not know beyond the body. But there is a sense of a true conviction, a true experience that occurs when we do reach towards reality, towards an integrated whole, and thereby integrating our own personality. And again, I wanted to ask you more about the judgment process and what's involved in that mechanism there. How can we circumvent judgment? How can we transcend it?
Well, I mean, there's a purpose and reason for measuring and gauging and distinguishing and comparing. But and I talk about it in my book. I think it's I want to say it's the third chapter, but it might be the end of the second. Judgment-based comparison versus understanding-based comparison. Judgment-based comparison is you have this list of do's and do nots that you hold around in your head. It's like this internal authority that you've cultivated through the cultivation of your identity based upon this narrative you experience. Each person experiences a narrative that brings them to this point. And so you've cultivated this, internal authority that basically gives you a structure to at this point, because it's so habituated, subconsciously throw at the moment. And so you can judge the moment as either good or bad, living up to your expectation or not, or over exceeding your expectation, good or bad, basically. Understanding comparison has nothing to do with good or bad. It has nothing to do with either or. I mean, there is no good or bad in reality. There is just what is. I mean, there's nothing else. And we can throw a fit about it, we can delay it, and we can, blow up each other's bodies, but, it still is. Reality, functions despite. And so, what's this? I don't know what's that. What was I saying? Between good and bad. Oh,
but it's not.
There is no. I mean, there is just what is, and there's a best way to nail that moment, to function within that moment as your individual functioning. I mean, everything is absolutely essential. There's no lack, and everything must be. So if that's true, even though we're experiencing it temporally, it doesn't matter where I am. Everything there is what should be, even if it's not being employed or used correctly, even if it doesn't look that way. Because we can make bombs out of these tools, or we can make bombs out of these tools and blow people up, but that's temporal. I mean, death doesn't exist. That's one of my major claims, and that's a hard one to get across. That's a really hairy one. But one of my claims is death doesn't actually exist. That the personality is eternal, and that it is continuous and uninterrupted, and conscious, aware. And so if death doesn't exist, and we throw all these fits, and we think we're having some kind of impact, in actuality we're not. We're simply procrastinating and spending the energy to do so, and believing it the entire time, which is incredibly sad, but incredibly irrelevant even then, because that's back to the good and bad judgment. I mean, me saying it's sad even isn't, that's irrelevant.
I wanted to read some quotes from your book, from your work, if possible, and there's so much of it, and just some of it we'll have plenty of time to go over it, but I'd like to just read some of it. Do you mind?
Yeah, no, yeah.
All right, thank you. There's so much. Particularly, I found that what you, at least this is what I think you're explaining, and I'd like you to verify that. I mean, we all have our own perceptions, but basically, we're having the experience of being a human being. And then the question becomes, what is that experience? What does it mean to be a human being? And then I really like how you point out that it is a threefold experience. But I'm just going to go from chapter 1, paper 1. Who am I? Let me read this paragraph. One moment. As a human, my natural drives of curiosity and reason led me to relentlessly question the substance of my existence. All of these questions regarding my origin and nature start with the inevitable and elusive why. It lies in wait at the foundation of all my spiritual, philosophical, and scientific contemplation. From the time I first thought to ask why, and now into my present day, the question of my being and existence continues to nag at the back of my mind because I know full well that I have not yet managed to answer the ever-present call, why? Since I know that I did not create myself, because I do not have the prior consciousness to do so, or the learned ability as of yet, all of my answers to these questions of origin and purpose leave off open-ended, for I have no tangible proof to assert the theoretical conclusions I reach on matters of abstract contemplation of who am I, why am I here, what purpose do I have, and who or what is God. Now I know your book answers these questions, but perhaps we could start with some of these just from the beginning. Who am I? How would you answer that as an existential theist?
Well, I mean, answering that, I also have to answer who is God. My claim is that God, the creator, is existential knowledge. Everything that could be, is, will be, whatever. I mean, however you want to put that. Obviously, we're, using word symbols, but, and God's also a person, because everything in existence, everything that could be, included within that is the expression of personality. So God must also be a person. Conscious, decisive, whatever. And God, being whole, complete, and perfect, can't grow as such. So at this hypothetical point before time, God figured out a way to grow by expressing God's self in a new way. God, being infinitely unified, infinitely diverse personality, extended God's self into, made the construct of time and extended space into it. So all the infinite aspects of God are put into combination, interaction, and are unfolded in a linear-ish fashion. And so us as personalities, I mean, we are focalized expressions of God's infinite personality.
That's what we are experiencing as a human being.
Yes, and we are eternal, just as eternal as God. We're not who we believe ourselves to be as such, but
because we're so much more than just the sum of it being human with an, dare I say, animal origin, earthly origin.
Well, I mean, the human's unique in the sense, I believe since all these aspects must be put into interaction with all other aspects and all the different combinations, I also believe every type of consciousness, personality must be explored. So the type of consciousness that the mortal is a consciousness that works from utter non-knowing, unknowing.
So you make a distinction between the personality and the human consciousness, although they're integrated to the extent that they can be. And you might even argue that through your spiritual, non-judgmental experience, you can actually integrate personality into human consciousness more, but...
Yeah, I mean, the personality, I am my personality. I mean, I'm not my body, I'm not even my mind. I am my personality.
Could you be other than self?
No, absolutely not. But if I am my personality, then my mind is what explores being this personality is. I'm absolutely essential because without this focalized expression of personality, then God wouldn't be whole, complete, and perfect. All of this is absolutely essential in the most...
But God needs man, and man needs God in this process.
God needs us just as much as we need God. I mean, I am God.
You spoke of the growth process that God, and I understood that when you said God needed this to grow, that God being the maximal, the infinite, the perfection, can't exceed self, but could circumvent that process by vicariously sharing, co-creating with the human being, with the human consciousness as the decision maker.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like God made a video game out to explore God's self. And now God's playing that video game. And God God has all the cheat codes, but isn't using them. Because...
That's a good way to put it.
All of it must be explored or expressed. I mean, so God is existential knowledge, becomes experiential knowledge.
In the only way it possibly could.
Right, so the point of this is for the experience. the point of any of this is for the experience of reality, nothing else.
What else would be? I guess that goes to the next question. I just want to make sure that I have it correctly, but in this experience, why am I here?
To experience this.
Because
to experience this. Without that,
so
this wouldn't be happening.
This was in a sense made, and we in a sense, I wanted to touch upon. You're suggesting, and if I have it correctly, that we have two origins, not just earthly but spiritual, and the combined experience of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, God the existential becomes God the experiential. So that's two different expressions of God, albeit inseparable in a absolute sense. And I distinguish this by God the Creator and the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is the experiential expression of God. So the Supreme Being is conscious too. I mean, existence is alive. It's awake, and it's thinking.
It's a person.
It is a person. It is a person, and experiencing its infinite personality through our experience of it.
And that follows the third question of your book. What purpose do I have? Do you find a relation to the Supreme Being the very purpose of your humanity?
Yes. I mean, to experience this is the point, but for the self, it's the aim of perfection. Because if we are perfect, and in this reality we experience a narrative and believe in the narrative that tells us that we aren't, then we don't act like our perfect selves. If we don't believe ourselves perfect, then we can't act that way. Or if we're never given the opportunity, we can't act that way. And I believe that mortal perfection is absolutely possible.
Is it safe to say that this particular experience couldn't take place in eternity by definition? That it had to be acted out here?
Yeah.
And yet, this very experience is an extension from eternity, and in a sense, I guess eternity has manifested to us right in this very moment.
Constantly.
Over and over.
Well, I mean, it's not even over and over, it's just present.
Present.
It's simply present.
A
it
continuity.
Simply is. Consistency, yes. So, first is the choice, reality or not, and then is the habituation of the choice. Many of us, or all of us at this point, because obviously look at what we live in, we don't learn to make that choice consciously upon our birth into this world, and because we habituate unreality in whatever ways, even if it's not all the time. I mean, there's so many good, moral, and intelligent and curious individuals still, but that doesn't negate, the fact that our minds are just riddled with misthinkings and just silly thoughts. Really, it's our superstitions, our most whatever. We because we're conscious of consciousness, we can look at that, we can realize that it's a misthinking, and we can choose to re-habituate that thought. So the decision to witness reality and interact with it as real must be made in every moment. And so mortal perfection comes about when that habituation is consistent and made in every moment.
By habituation, you're not just talking about brushing our teeth or going to bed on the right time. You're talking about a framework, a perspective in which you look out into the world and look into self.
Yes, but also practice. I mean, put into action. Like, okay, for instance, I had severe social anxiety for a number of years. And I would get the fear every time I was walking down the street and someone walked by. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to make eye contact, say hi, look away, was it rude, am I getting in their space, whatever it was. And so I very consciously, I used to live in this studio on the east side, a couple blocks away from Rochambeau, and I wrote a good chunk of my book there. And I would walk there every day. I was like 3 or 4 blocks away, something like that. And every day I decided I would keep my head up, and every person I walked by, I'd look straight in the eye, and I'd say hi, or I'd nod, or I'd give some greeting to. And so despite that fear, I did that over and 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 over again, consciously. And now it's no longer conscious.
But it sounds to me like you were conscious of yourself being conscious of this issue, and therefore you had a transcendental viewpoint.
The ability to think upon our thinking. I mean, that's what distinguishes us from the other conscious minds on our planet, animals and such. Our ability to re-habituate ourselves, the ability to choose different, the free will capacity between reality and unreality. I mean, animals, they exist in reality constantly. They don't know anything else. I mean, they're incredibly real, whereas we kind of, I don't know, waver a lot.
Between a material perception and a mind existence, a mind within the material perception.
Yes, I mean, it's not a separation, because the material is necessary. This body is necessary. It's the tool. It's the portal into this, and
at least for the human experience.
Yes, yeah. It's the interactor, but we're talking about the human, you know. I mean, it is our experience, and we have to start there. So, like, the body's awesome. All body. It's an incredible, powerful tool, and it's all for our use, and we can choose how to use it, you know, helpful or not. But it's temporary. It's not lasting, and it's not our identity.
And that's why it's not real.
It's real. It's just not real as we believe it to be. I mean, you know, this space, this matter, in whatever way, there's reality there. It's expressing something. It's real in the sense that this experience is real, but not in the way that we experience it, not in the way that we believe it to be, because.
Well, indeed, it's difficult to tell someone in human consciousness that their very experience at the moment isn't the reality that they think it is, but really when we're saying that the table, the chair, the tree, they all share the same purpose as the universe, and to perceive self as limited in purpose isn't a full picture of reality.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. But this table, that chair, that tree, you know, that's all very real. It's God manifest. What forms it takes at any given time are, you know, just different idea expressions that are also part of God or whatever. And allow for, you know, this exploration. What we believe about it, you know, isn't necessarily real. Other than the fact that it exists, you know.
Are you saying that in truth we live in our mind, not our body? Now, this is difficult to grasp, but I just wanted your viewpoint on that. Do we live in the body or the mind? I guess that's the question.
We live in the mind, but we exist through the body.
If I took away the body, will the mind exist? I guess, yeah, that's a difficult...
I mean, but that's like saying taking away a part of God. The body's real. Space is real-ish. Whereas time is not-ish. I mean, space is much more real than time is. So the forms that space takes, the expressions based upon the mind, based upon the ideas, you know, are various and changing and whatever. I mean, this table is not a table, but it is a manifestation of God. I mean...
Can there be anything that is not a manifestation of God?
No. No, nothing real exists. Or nothing unreal exists. Nothing real can be threatened. I mean, back to that, nothing real can be threatened. It doesn't matter how much... I mean, we could throw or split atoms to the day is long and blow all kinds of shit up and, you know, grow cancer in our bodies. But it just does that. I mean, we chose to do this action, it leads to these things, and this is what happens, and we experience this. And we can choose otherwise and do other things, but, that's all efficiency. I mean, none of those things are conscious themselves. They're not vindictively trying to do this. They're structured in a way where they have limited interactions. They have, just like we are. I mean, as a personality, I can't be your person. You have to be your person. For me, for yourself. You can't be me in whatever way. Just like, this whatever space or body that this phone takes up or whatever it is. Like, it must be, essentially, even if it's not in the form of a phone. I'm kind of losing this one. I'm not...
No, actually, I found a section in your work that I wanted to mention and read to the audience, actually, that pertains to that very question, and I believe it's your answer in your own words here. Mm-hmm. It's a long book, but I like to read. This is from My Mental Evolution Through Time. That's why I asked. To quote you, Ms. Dabney, the physical world plays a highly significant and impactful role in my concept of self, but my mental construction truly defines me as a human being, and as aforesaid, not my physical embodiment, as I often conclude. The physical world, which consists of physical objects, including people, places, and things, and my personal body, ultimately functions as a tool to be facilitated, but does not exist as the defining factor of self. My mind employs physical reality as a tool in order to define my concept of self, but the physical world, as a standalone, does not inherently provide a definition for me. Since no definition of self can be derived from the external world, I can ideally utilize physical existence by arriving at my true self through the unfolding of my experience of self in the world, rather than attempting to remake myself by the repeated association of my identity with material objects or the physical plane at large. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of gnawing on, like saying, could this exist without body in whatever way? I would say that's like saying this could exist without mind. I mean, if this is God, then nothing can be absent. I mean, what form it takes, how, because we're experiencing this linearly, we're experiencing it in spread out moments-ish instead of all at once, so it's taking all these various forms, is also necessary in whatever way, but it's still, like, the body itself must exist, because the form it takes is like it's more mind, or it's the bridge between mind and no, I guess the form everything takes would be mind, an expression of mind, whereas the personality would be the expression of self, meaning, how to get at that one?
It's your personness. It's you.
Yeah. It's an essential note in a.
In other words, not only were we not created for ourselves alone, we, in a sense, are given the chance to be this person. Whatever that means, we can't seem to be something other than who we are.
Yeah.
And that's given to us by God, who is personality, who is.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get away from this, like, I don't know, maybe not.
Get away
it's
from
extended. It's not given. I mean, it is given in a sense, but it's extended. I mean, it's not like, we existed and God gave us a gift. It's more like God said, this is what I can do, and did it, and is doing it. So it's not so much, it's very self-indulgent, beautifully so. It's very, it's for the self, the capital S, the greater self. It's God doing something for God's self, because God's a curious personality.
I mean, theosophically, God cannot look in a mirror, but in a sense, this entire cosmic experience became that mirror, not just for God, who I believe cannot perceive, but can share in the experience of perception by co-creating with a human being created, literally manifested from a material plane, given a conscious identity as a separated being and yet inextricably not separated because of that connection to God, through God, and in God.
Yeah, and I mean, I wrote about this just yesterday. I was working on the fourth chapter of my book, and I was writing about the potential and what is potential and what is actual. And in God the Creator and God the Existential, there's no distinction between the potential and the actual. It just all is, and it's absolute in whatever way. Whereas in the temporal realm, we experience a difference, a transition from the potential to the actual. And my claim is everything that is potential is potential. It simply is, and we can procrastinate its actualization or not, but it's the potential is just as real as the actual, and
And do you feel often a pulling force towards that potential, towards the spiritual? How would you describe that? Because it becomes I feel that all human beings have a spiritual yearning, even though I couldn't quite describe what that means. But in all cultures, we yearn for something beyond the human experience, as if we sense innately that there is something more. There is.
But it's not beyond the human experience. It's the precipice of the human experience. It's the experience of this. God experiencing God and the conscious realization of that. And that's where, moral perfection manifests in whatever way. If I actually, fully habituated and manifested my belief or faith, I would be experiencing something. And far greater in whatever way. And I do, increasingly more so. It gets weirder. And it's not so much, it's not a pulling. It's a presence. It's a sitting with. And it's sure. It's very sure, and it's a leap of faith, because it can only be experienced. It cannot be made or by banging rocks together or doing a chemical combination or drawing a picture or writing a book. It can't be. It can only be experienced. The living experience of this of this happening, this very, very real happening. And it's an opening. And I feel myself become more real, and that reality doesn't lessen. I become increasingly more real. So we have the ability to acquire truth. Absolute truth, no, because we're relative creatures, but relative truth. So if I have this piece of truth, and then I add another to it, and 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 I don't add the unhelpful, the untrue, the unreal, or I fetter it out when I find it, or whatever, then eventually I build up this experience and this store and this exploration and this co-creation with reality, and by implementation of the truths unveiled to me, because they're constantly being unveiled in whatever way. It's very present, always, and it's awkward sometimes too, and it's also in conflict with what I originally learned myself to be, or what I originally believed myself to be, and so it's
almost contrary to the human experience.
Not contrary to this make-believe experience that we manifested right now, because we believe it's real.
Right, I should have said contrary to the belief of what the human experience is supposed to be.
Right.
Maybe that would have been more in line. I'd like to read from your book again, My Spiritual Evolution Through Time, and it speaks to the subject we're on. Intrinsic spiritual awareness motivates me to seek God. Intrinsic spiritual awareness motivates me to seek God, and that's an awakening within yourself, realization in yourself that there's something more than self there as you perceive self, and you found it to be intrinsic, innate, inherent in your being.
Yeah, I think that's why we've always played with the idea of magic and wanting to bust that veil. And we want it to be real obvious. We want it to be all showy and, something that we can brag about. But that's contrary to the reality of it, which is when you break that veil, it's the sitting with the happening, because it's so present. The belief in magic, the belief in sin, guilt, the belief in anything lacking, the belief that separation, loneliness, lack of love, belief in death.
All common to the human experience.
Yeah, but those are all habituated. Those are taught. I mean, you get your basic ones like, okay, be afraid of that, cliff coming or that rock falling or, whatever it is. And those are very much part of the tool of the body. I mean, the body's reacting and doing things necessarily so, but you have the ability to understand them and direct them. So, okay, I can hit my toe and ow, it hurts and I'm in pain and I can get all grumpy about it or look for sympathy or all these things, or I can just sit with the pain, let it go, experience it, and take care of it and heal past it. And it actually, it's amazing, like, if you don't make a deal about pain or if you don't make a deal about whatever that fear is, it leaves quicker, or it just opens and dissipates instead of...
Clearly fear would amplify pain, at least it has for me.
Yeah.
And love or laughter seems to dispel it.
Absolutely. And the personality plugged into this body is supposed to be plugged into this body in whatever way. It's compatible. So when we think, we're triggering all kinds of chemicals and shit, or stuff, and we're triggering all kinds of, we're triggering all kinds of reactions. It's like pushing that domino that hits the next, that hits the next, that hits the next. And so we can know that, and we can know how to use that and respond to that and take care of that, be attentive to that, and whatever.
It's interesting. Sometimes I feel that it's more difficult to do that for ourselves than it is to see it in other people. And if I just can't wonder if it's because when we look at other people's problems or analyze them, it's easier for us to be objective because we're not inside them with their same concerns, their same worries. Yet I at least find it hard for myself. For all that I would understand.
Yeah, but that's like, okay, because, let's say I'm upset about whatnot and whatnot. And I want to be upset about it. And so I want to be upset about it, and so I want to get attention for it. So what do? I talk about it, and I tell everyone, and I don't look for a solution, but I look for sympathy, and I look for validation, and I look for all kinds of whatever attention.
Seems to work for me, actually.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to get something out of that, or it's going to heal that pain in whatever way.
But as a human being, forgive me, but just as a human being, I can't help but sometimes feel weak, or any of us, that...
No, being honest with your where you're at isn't a bad thing. Using it as this ego tool to get attention and throw a fit is unhelpful.
No, indeed.
Looking at it, giving your family the awareness that you're processing this in whatever way and seeking help when it's necessary. But you must, I gotta actively choose to
see, that's, I guess, what you
work through it.
Right? Aren't you saying, you would say then that in going out and socializing these problems, we can either seek advice, wisdom, counsel, or we can seek just simply the validation of our own short-sighted perspective.
Yeah. And it's a choice, and it's a choice of what you want to get out of it. Do you want to relieve this temporary upheaval, or do you want to reaffirm it as real? Pretend like it's, maybe make it more real and whatever, fictional unreality you've created for yourself.
I guess everybody has to answer that for themselves in any given moment.
Yeah, definitely. I had one more point I wanted to talk about, and I can't remember what it was.
Well, if you don't remember, I have one more paragraph that I find interesting and would like to read. And it just corresponds again to what we're talking about. Once I held highly superstitious beliefs because I did not have the concepts of science and philosophy to rationalize the seemingly bizarre workings of the world. However, I still have some vague awareness that the phenomena of existence must consist of more than what I simply see and touch. I used to worship various aspects of the plant and animal life, the sun, the moon, weather, etc. I realized early on that these factors of environment lay beyond my control. Thus, I viewed the workings of nature as far more powerful than me, and viewing these forces of power, I comparatively diminished myself because I believed that the responsibility for my person lay in the hands of unseen controllers, of whom I had no ability to influence in the direction of my fate. Clearly, you do not still feel that way at this point.
I don't believe in magic. I don't believe in superstition. I believe everything is knowable, and that's the point, to know God. Whereas it's, relative, increasingly ever greater stratums of relative truth can be had still. It is knowledge-based. It's not based upon unknowing.
So there's not, although the controllers, as it were, being God, might be unseen to the human eyes, they're not unknown or unknowable. God is knowable.
Yeah, but they're not even so much controllers. I mean, it's not this,
I'm talking about
or whatever, but it's mechanisms. It's structures that allow this to happen.
Gravity.
Yeah, basically.
Electromagnetic forces.
Yep.
Nuclear, strong, and weak.
The eye. Digestion. Rain. Weather. All kinds of things. There's all kinds of structures that are really efficient and allow this to happen. Allow this experience to be at all.
Right. So much so that it almost seems it could not be that, right? You had a thought?
Yeah, I remembered what I was going to say.
Oh, please continue.
Back to this idea of how you orient yourself towards the happenings of the body in whatever way. As you well know, I suffered from depression, clinical depression, for many, many years, which is a chemical disorder, chemical imbalance, and it's strong in in the females of certain lines. My mom, my grandmother, and my sister struggles with it, but it's a chemical happening. It's a cycle that you go through. And when it hit me first, when I was just reaching puberty, I didn't know how to understand it. I didn't know how to interact with it. I didn't know how to react with it. And so I created this self-destructive habit of reaction towards it. Now, it's just a natural part of my living and being, and I know exactly how to be and handle it. Happiness is a consistent state. It is not something fleeting. It is not something found in some small moment. It's found in the ever-present moment, always. If you're to have it, it's a consistent state. It's a habit of thought, and so finding that. So even when I am more introverted, is how I explain it now, or more, or less social, or more detached, or more downbeat. I find myself happy still, and at peace.
And that happiness is, what is the foundation? What do you stand on that happiness? How would you describe that?
Well, it's back to the three axioms. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Here lies the peace of God.
And the peace of God can be shared with us because it is real.
Yep, just as present. Yep.
I'd like to thank you, Miss Dabney. This has been a wonderful hour. We need to wrap up the show. We have another show coming up. I'm Michael Wordsworth. I'll be interviewing Miss Dabney, and it's a pleasure and honor to do so. Next episode, we'll make sure that you know how to obtain her book if you'd like that, and it's available online. But thank you for listening. This has been an existential, theistic look from an experiential perspective.
Thank you, Michael.
You're most welcome. Take care.